Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is JupyterLab, the Jupyter contributor meeting for December 17th, 2025. See Jeremy or Mike, you're first.
Okay, so I wanted to first talk about JupyterLab 4.6 release plan and along that Jupyter Notebook 7.6. We have a placeholder ratio. Thank you, Jeremy, for opening that. There are three things which caught my attention recently that could be good candidates to go into minor release, potentially do not require a major one. First one is upgrade to Vega 6. So currently we are shipping Vega 5. There is an issue pointing out that technically there is a security vulnerability which was not backported to the 5 line. Um, so I think that the only way to get that fixed is to switch to Vega 6 or drop the um, bundled Vega extensions. Now I think they are for the most part backward compatible. Like there is different MIME type, but so far I believe when were upgrading, the newer renderer was capable of rendering the older versions as well. So it should be rather uncontroversial and just requires someone to do the work and someone to review the work. Um, but hopefully they didn't change too much. Uh, Apart from that, it's all ESM now. In a similar vein, MavJax 4.1 was just released maybe 2 days ago, and we were initially hoping to get MavJax 4 into JupyterLab 4, but we ended up with MavJax 3, which was still a big modernization, but MavJax 4 only like fixed the regression with new lines, etc. MavJax 4.1, according to the changelog, improves the compatibility and generally makes the version 4, the 4 line, uh, more mature and safer to use with diverse set of users. So maybe this is a good point for us to upgrade. Um, and that's something which technically could break things for users, but there are good reasons to upgrade. Those include both accessibility and feature parity with older notebooks and JupyterLab versions. So floating these ideas in case anyone is looking for um, ways to spend time or just has tried any of these and knows that no, we should not do that because on a particular issue. And the final one is um, a proposal in the issues. Someone wanted to add an extension to marked.js, which would allow us to render the alerts, which GitHub does support. So GitHub flavored Markdown, which we largely follow, supports that, but notebooks currently don't. So it's a big decision to include something like that because once people start adding it, it gets there. But people are currently switching to JupyterLab Mist, which has its own problems, and it offers kind of feature richness that users come to expect from Markdown nowadays. So I think there is a case for including that. My major concern so far was one, it is a larger change. Two, this is the extension itself does not live in the official ArcJS organization. So like we don't want to have maintenance problems later on. But assuming that the second problem is fixed, I just wanted to hear if people have opinions on like, is it something that you think is critical or something which is completely like an use case?
Is the question whether to allow extensions to extend marked, which we had historically pushed back against because once that happens, you never get to render anything the same way twice? Or is it adding another extension to quote unquote JupyterLab Markdown that
I think the
now is
latter.
not going to be in missed if they add it, right? Like if you switch out the factory, you switch out the factory, like it renders everywhere. So,
Yeah,
there's a
I think it's not about allowing to arbitrarily extend it, but to just add this like GitHub flavored alerts.
Yeah, I mean, the last big thing we did to Markdown was Mermaid, and we did that because GitHub supported it. But it was also supported by GitLab and a couple other places. It was just part of the standard thing. Um, so it raises the question: if you start allowing even more stuff that's not on, for example, those two forges, I guess Bitbucket does too. No one cares about Bitbucket. Um, you know, what is the required external feature set required to get to, yeah, we should call that part of JupyterLab markup, and then, or JupyterLab markdown, and then how do we get it into NB convert as well, and all the other places where we do markdown stuff, right? So what was this specific one? I'm sorry, I missed the initial
Alerts.
comment. Is there a link?
Yep.
Thank
Like
you.
when you like a warning and this kind of and this is
Oh,
the
the
package.
admonitions. Good Lord. Okay. Yeah. All right. So GitLab and GitHub and Mist and Bitbucket and Confluence and Jira all have different implementations of alerts. So I would say that that is not presently a feature that one can rely on between all these different platforms. Like it's going to render in one place, it's not going to render in another place. It hasn't moved that forward. I don't know. The other option, of course, is to start actually describing our MIME type for what it is and extend the notebook spec to allow you to say this is GFM plus GitLab specific sauce plus something else, you know. But just adding something that's not going to work all over is brutal because they don't always look good when they fall back, right? Making everything a fence code block doesn't always look good, and that's the fallbacks for a lot of these fancy things.
Okay, that's super useful. I didn't know that the implementations across like GitLab and GitHub might be different. I know that Mist definitely has a different one, but this is a good thing to check. And well, the MIME type, I think we played with this idea and wanted that for a long time. And when we implement that is a separate question, but I guess that makes this particular issue less likely a candidate for 4.6. Like maybe the things need to standardize first before we decide on moving forward with that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I got a long, the one of the precursors to JupyterLab Mist was JupyterLab Markdown, and there's a discussion there, and it's like everyone just throws up their hands. We can't have nice things. There's no way to describe what Markdown is, you know, and and they're not wrong. So if we were looking to make a standard, I would say that our standard would be here's how to describe how it's not standard. That would be the best thing we can do. Like in a sense, we kind of won for math jacks, even though we implement math in a different way with a different backend with different plugins than other people. But kind of, if you write dollar dollar, you're going to get math. And if you write dollar dollar new line dollar dollar, you're going to get a block of math, and that's pretty good. A lot of other stuff, we're just kind of tap dancing along with what upstreams do. What is Markdown is not what GitHub says it's Markdown. It's when GitHub succeeds and other people feel the irresistible pull of using the GitHub, GitLab, whatever feature. But I don't think that we can just pick a big tech vendor and say we're going to do what they do. We need to be able to give you a way to say, this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't do it, what do you do when you don't do it? So, yeah, it's real hard.
Okay, so is the conclusion of that the request that this issue says to use the alert, the answer is no, let's not?
I think no, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, I can't answer nothing, right?
Well, you're being asked a question and you are giving an answer. I'm trying to just get the summary of that answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there was gonna be some kind of policy that you guys wanted to put to a vote, there'd have to be some evidence-based metric for this is a markdown feature that we can now use.
Yeah.
And GitHub uses it. Yes, it has to be on GitHub. If it's not on GitHub, we're not going to do it because we build our stuff on GitHub. So that's one good thing. Does it need to have one other platform that has it enabled by default? Who else can I do that on? Can I do it on? I can't do it on Wikipedia because I think it's Markdown. Slack, I don't care. That doesn't matter. It's got to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
For us to do, I feel like that would be a policy. It has to be on at least two major platforms used by the Jupyter project. Maybe that's a bad metric. We use too many platforms. But like HedgeDoc, does it work on HedgeDoc or HackMD? Right?
Okay, so broadly speaking, it's about which one subverts user expectations more or less, I guess, but not really, right? Because the alert syntax is unambiguously like I'm invoking some markdown flavored thing. So yeah, I do see the difficulty in codifying a rule. I think up till now, instead of a rule, what we've done is we've just thought this appears to have critical mind share, so we need to follow along.
Yeah, unless it's a specific case where it's like we need math and we're going to do math even though other people don't do math.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a great decision. With the other direction being going, we extend the notebook model for Markdown Cell, which is very data poor right now. And you can say which MIME type you support in a specific notebook or down to the cell level. And now you could ship all of them. If you can make the argument, hey, GitHub is important. Okay, GitHub is important. I'm going to make a GitHub notebook that has an IPython kernel, and then it has this other mode of Markdown. And then we make sure that our syntax highlighting works for it inside of CodeMirror with that specific extension. And we make sure that Marked works with that explicit extension, MIME type. And then we're golden. And then Mist wouldn't have to replace everything because you could say, I want a Mist notebook, not a GitHub notebook, because we know those don't work together. And people could add whatever they want, with the default being you don't get none of that. You get stuff that follows some metric that we agree on, whatever. And then similarly, figure out how to backport that to NB convert. Yeah. Oh no, there's a JEP. What is this?
Yeah, I actually
Specify.
I must have read this because in my head I was about to respond with, no, actually, I think you should just specify the flavor of the markdown cell, and users should be able to pick different flavors, and we should render lots of them, and it should just be another property of your notebook, like another piece of content, because there's too many of them, and apparently that's what this JEP roughly says.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's true would be to throw all of that out, not throw it out, but to amend that for portability's sake with, I'm also going to encode the HTML in an output. I'm going to make Markdown with an output. So, you know, it's an output that's not, it's not created by, it's not, you can strip the outputs. So now there's no HTML embedded in there. Or you can run the thing and now there is HTML in there or whatever, but it would create this whole new world of, you know, our ability to say, yeah, we will support your ability to write an alert. We will, when this is served through lab or it's served through NB convert, we will provide the CSS to make it look good. But if you clear all outputs, it's going to fall back to the browser rendering it. And if it does not, you know, if you don't have that plugin, that's not going to be in there anymore. That could be even more confusing. I don't know. But we will never get a markdown standard. HTML is a standard.
I do think the saving grace of all this is Vidar's last point there, that even if it doesn't render, it looks fine and marked out. Like you can look at it and be like, oh, that's an alert, and understand what you're looking at.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're mix multiple alerts in one. Make all of them. I don't know. I mean, like, it just depends on what the goal is. Because frankly, if we were actually using JupyterLab in the multi-editing mode, I would want those pounds to link to PRs and issues. Similarly, if I was working on a GitLab, I would want all of their pounds and exclamation marks and dollar signs. That'll break nothing, right? That point to different kinds of entities. And you would want those if you were actually trying to collaborate on something with a technical team. But that just is entirely out of scope, right? Like you got to know what context you're in, and you'd have to look at your Git repo and your origins and all that to figure out what it is. So, yeah. I mean, because they have different ways to do like includes, right? Like I think GitHub has a way to do that. You can pull in includes. They got cool diffs, all these other things that are backed by their service, right? So, you know.
Yeah,
But yes.
to say one of the magical experiences of GitHub is putting in a GitHub URL and it giving me something meaningful instead. But we're not a hosted service. We're not trying to do that. Like their use of a URL as an input and we can do stuff with it is fine for their platform. It's not a general purpose thing that other Markdown can offer.
Right.
I mean, it can maybe with like, you can imagine, I don't know, especially URLs to like images, somebody making an opinionated choice to put the image in line or something like that. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I think, is there a conclusion here? I think we should move on. Maybe a conclusion is doing a quick census of platforms that support this syntax and seeing really how widespread it is. Of course, GitHub is a pretty heavyweight platform here, but HackMD supports it, as you see in the HackMD notes. And it stays true to the ethos of Markdown, which is it should look fine in a plain text email. Like it should be understandable and readable in a plain text email. I'm inclined to support it from what I'm seeing right now, but I would be interested in seeing a census of, or even a quick census of what platforms, and even coming up with that list of platforms we check to see if they support a particular markdown syntax would be really useful. Right.
Oh, the other argument I saw against it is that it looks great unless you're not writing English. That has been the argument, because there are no contentful English specifiers in Markdown.
This is the first English word that becomes part of the spec.
English word. So that was the big pushback when they were like, look, you can make annotate. What?
Right.
You know,
that is a good point.
So that was the initial pushback, and all of them the same problem, because they try and make something that does look good in an English email on Usenet from the 80s. A bunch of white guys,
I genuinely was about to agree with Jason and say I'm inclined to do it, and then you talked me out of it.
Let's note that on the thing and move on. Thanks, Nick, again for bringing valuable insight to the conversation and ruining everyone's day. Just kidding, not ruining everyone's day. Thanks for bringing up good points people hadn't thought about. Jeremy, releases.
Yep. A lot of releases this week. So we have patch releases for Lab, Notebook, and Lite, and also alpha releases for Lab and Notebook. And the alpha releases, they include the RSpec migration, which actually helped find the first issue with RSpec, which I logged earlier today, which only affects the prod build. So I looked a little bit into this, and it seems related to the minifier, which is used by RSpec. So maybe so I reported the issue upstream. I will wait a little bit to see if they fix it quickly. Otherwise, I think we can implement a workaround, but I would prefer to wait for a proper fix. And yeah, if you would like to start using the alpha, that would be great, especially for building extensions, so we can find like potential other issues early in the 4.6 release process. And let's see. Yeah, so that's it for me. Yeah. Next one is Darian.
I have one. Yeah, I just wanted to get a sanity check and see if anyone has an objection to this plan. I've linked an issue in a repo in Jupyter AI Contrib. That's a very small single purpose function, to command for adding a footer to a cell in a notebook and adding it under the input area instead of under the output area. And this seems like a general purpose thing. It kind of seems like an API JupyterLab should have. And the clean way to do it in an extension is much more heavyweight than the clean way to do it in core. So if there's no objection, my intention is to offer that as a piece of JupyterLab's API and then go upstream of this and find in the JupyterLab diff extension that was using it, have that use the native JupyterLab core version of this. Any thoughts?
Yes, this is closely related to something I've been working on past week, which is fixing a conflict between JupyterLab favorites and JupyterLab mist. So currently, this extension does not work with JupyterLab mist, the JupyterLab's input footer, because both try to override the notebook panel content factory.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a great reason to have a native API.
Yes. Now, I do wonder. So in the case of the JupyterLab favorites, I wanted to override a different part of the content factory. So like the notebook panel content factory has a dozen of functions, methods, and the typical pattern for extension is you extend the existing class and override one of the methods, calling the parent class implementation of that method, and then adding something on top of it. Or in case of JupyterLab Mist, completely swapping up the Markdown cell implementation. So I was slowly thinking about like, should we allow to customize that independently? Should we enable more composition over inheritance? But yeah, the case of the footer is special because it would modify 3 methods anyways for each type of the cell. And
So in this particular case, what would be happening is one need for writing your own content factory disappears
yeah,
because there's one further extension point. But the general problem of two extensions may both legitimately have good reason for writing their own content factory, that doesn't disappear with this. It's just becomes slightly less common. I don't really have a good answer to that problem though.
yeah, but so what you could potentially have is like when we call create markdown cell, someone has to get the initial cell. But what this extension does is then once the cell is ready, it adds the footer to the cell. Like currently, maybe to make that easier for everyone to see, I will link the place in the code where it happens currently. So maybe we should allow kind of have a callback extension point which gets a ready markdown cell and allows to manipulate it or any kind of cell. I don't know. I mean maybe it's cleaner to just have the single special case of a footer being a dedicated extension point, but potentially having an extension point which allows you to get a result of the content factory, hook into the content factory. Oh, that's the word I was looking for, and modify the result before it's returned. Maybe that's something that we generally need.
Yeah, that does sound like a good point in the life cycle to offer an extension point. This the content factory premise in general, it really seems pretty flexible, but also pretty heavy. And it is sort of like this piece of the logic that you've shared where like you can see where something can go wrong because you're giving a handle back to something and then doing something after ready, but somebody else might like you're giving the user the opportunity to create a problem because of the nature of this API. And we're locked into it because we didn't initially make it async. But like, yeah, and I'm not sure how to get out of it now. You offering a point in this life cycle where you can intervene, it doesn't make the safety problem go away, but at least it gives you the right place to intervene instead of the wrong place, which is probably what people are doing now and hoping for a race condition to not happen. Yeah, I don't imagine I'm going to make this better, honestly. So, but yes, I do think that is a honestly, I think a making these things somehow fit a better, safer model for the next version of the API, it almost seems too high a cost at this point. Like I wouldn't even say, okay, JupyterLab 5 should have a different API here, because I think it would just like annoy people too much. Okay, anyone else have any thoughts on this? I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. I just wanted to make sure nobody like thinks it's a terrible idea. So I'm looking mostly for objections, if anyone has any. Cool. Thank you.
I think I'm next. I was looking around for places where our entire development process is slowed down or it's sapping energy or strength. And one of the issues we've seen persistently recently is tests failing. So I've been looking at the test failures. One of the things I noticed when I was trying to run local tests in JupyterLab was that the JLPM top level run build test and the run test commands failed. And it looks like from the change history that they might have been failing for like a year or more now. I am really curious. How do people run the tests? Do people run the tests locally, like inside of individual packages? Does anybody run the top level test command? Because I'm really surprised that it doesn't work. Okay, Mike's shaking his head for the top level test command, but you do run individual packages. Okay, Jeremy, individual packages.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What's the iteration and test cycle look like? That's what I was wondering. What are people actually using?
So when you're working on one package, running its tests is usually fairly reliable, and you can do that. And then your hope is that if the PR tests are failing, it has nothing to do with you. So you investigate it and you find whether it does or not by reading its logs. And if it doesn't have anything to do with you and you have sufficient permission on the repo, you just rerun it, wait an hour and a half, check again. So that's been my cycle, but I'm not an active developer. Other people are more active. Maybe they have a better way of doing it.
Registered individual packages. And obviously, a lot of tests run when you push it to CI, though those tests are hard coded. We don't just run the top level build test, run test. We hard coded individual packages, and I think that's so we could get parallel test runs.
So I think a couple of times we had a case when we added a new package or a new extension, and the tests were not added to CI because they are hard-coded. They are just a list. The list is there to allow to parallelize across multiple CI jobs, which is great. But yeah, we had this problem over and over again. I think 3 times I've fixed that. So yeah, running them from top level once might be useful because it will at least flag any issues, but it might be just too slow on CI.
Nick, you mentioned you use Pixie, which I think we don't have the supported Pixie files checked into the repo.
Yeah, it's one file, and I'm about it. And if I greenfield a project, you'd have to pry it from my cold dead hands. It's not a thing you just show up and tell somebody to use. And like you go to a too big of a project. I mean, they just got some into CPython, right? There is a pixie.toml in CPython source.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But there's a limited number of things.
I've been gradually shifting over to Pixie. I would not be opposed to, if you're already using Pixie in JupyterLab development, to having an extra file that allows people to use Pixie easily.
Yeah, it's the same old thing as any task runner. It's like, how much do you leave, putting everything inside of your PyPy wheel, yeah. I think we've learned is not great. It's good to be able to run one command to get your PyPy wheel, but that's not actually true with what we have. We can get a PyPy wheel from the source dist, which is good, but it's very hard to get one from a check-in or an MR or something like that, right? So yes, that is our product, and that is important. But then you get to all the intermediate stuff, and then we got stuff that only works in CI, and Pixie ain't going to help you there. You know, Pixie's not going to help you do Node stuff other than install Node and the appropriate, you know, Apple Silicon headers, you know, that didn't exist in the 5-year-old tool that you built before the M1 came out. And then if you start mixing Pixie with other task runners like Lerna, which we don't even need anymore, Yarn just does that stuff now, like except for maybe publish, but it basically does it now, and it's not pushing us to their cloud feature. If those things don't agree, then you get the worst. You get this matrix of death.
Right.
So like, I got my Pixie thing. It's built out of the pieces of package.json scripts and pieces of the CI scripts because I can't keep track of how those work, and the releaser doesn't work for me locally, and you know all the other stuff. So
maybe after the holidays, I'd love to sit down with you and see. You hit a lot of these paper cuts. I'd love to see what you think would be good to simplify the infrastructure around this.
Well,
but
it doesn't always make it simpler.
Yeah.
It doesn't always make it simpler. It will make it more robust. It will make it more robust.
Make it better. Let's sit down and talk about it and see if we can come up with some plan. And also on the Mermaid.js failures, I'll just call attention to a short discussion that's starting to happen on this PR around, okay, where did the Mermaid.js failures start happening, etc. I think we ought to move on in the conversation in this meeting, but I'll call your attention to the PR.
Turn off the ones that fail.
Yeah.
Stop testing them.
I'm taking a quick crack at it, and if it's not easy to fix, then I agree. It's better to turn off the ones that fail than to drag everybody's development down.
Oh, baby, you'd be the 11th and the 10th hand in there. That's going to be, you know.
Yep.
It's a lot. I mean, the thing is, for screenshots, this seems like what screenshots should be for. This seems like what screenshot-based testing should actually be good at.
We'll see.
But it is a complex beast, and it is related to that race condition in Markdown that we're talking about. Dimes to donuts. There's something happening that's not being awaited somewhere, and that's why we're getting blank screen, you know, when it's trying to load it. Two other things that might help. Create new view 4 so that the thing always shows up in exact, you know, we don't have that for Markdown.
Yeah.
Which we should have, because that would feel great, right? I'm going to pop open my Markdown cell over on the right. I'm going to edit it in my notebook, and I'm going to see it rendered over there. That would also nail this test to the wall because it's not going to move, you know, over there. It's going to just be right there. Other one, we can force image sizes. But I think what we're running into, as we discussed earlier, is scrolling. Mm-hmm. And scrolling doesn't work very well right now.
That's my current hypothesis, is the scrolling issue.
Yeah. But, so if we can get it into a fixed place, or that's just an image tag. So if you right click and open new view in new tab, that will be in the same place in the XY, and would always look the same. So
thanks for the litany of things to try. Appreciate it, Nick. Let's move on to Nicholas. Is he still? Oh, there he is. Yep.
Yeah. Just wanting to have opinion on UI UX thing for the settings. The first one, so I linked 2 issues. I will try to put it there. So the first one is about the shortcuts. To be able to add, so currently in the shortcut we cannot add a new shortcut for command so we can only edit existing shortcut, and we cannot add a new shortcut from the setting panel. So I already start working on it to be able to display all the commands existing in JupyterLab and be able to add shortcut on it. So it's possible to add a shortcut with including the selector and the args in there. But Mike suggests to maybe instead of displaying all the command, just adding a button and setting everything, I think, in a form or something like that. Like you set all the command name and everything there. So I just wanting to know if some people have opinion on it about displaying all the command and being able to add a specific shortcut for one, or just displaying a form. And so maybe, I guess, to select the command, we'll have like a huge list of other existing command. So I don't really know. So that's it. I just wanted to see if people have an opinion on it and maybe discuss it on the issue. Yeah.
So my suggestion originates from the need to specify the arguments. So if we only display all the commands, say for which there are no shortcuts defined yet, then we can create one shortcut per command, and some commands require arguments. So that's kind of the reasoning. And of course, having ability to add shortcuts to commands without shortcuts as of today is already an improvement. But I think what many users would want is the ability to actually add commands with arguments, because those are things which people use for automation, like inserting snippets of code or doing a couple of actions at once. And this needs those arguments.
Yeah, but currently this is possible because you can add a shortcut, and then you have a way to add argument and selector on the command with this shortcut.
Yeah, so as long as you can add this command over and over multiple times, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
So I think you might be tempted to allow one shortcut per combination of args plus command. But I think even that is too big a restriction. I think you should be able to invoke the same exact action with multiple shortcuts, because lots of times multiple shortcuts in other UIs work to do the same action, so users might have that expectation. Let's see, what's a good like ways of
I
ways of
think,
getting. Sorry, go ahead.
I think the UI already allows that.
Yeah.
So we are not.
Okay. Okay, great. Sweet.
Okay, thank you. And the other one is about the layout of the setting panel. So this is an issue opened by Andre. And I commented at the end, but I wonder if we should not. So for just for the context, the setting panel is built from using React JSON schema form library, and we have we customize it to have a specific display for the form. And I wonder if we should not stick to something more similar to what is the default in React JSON schema form, because I think it's more clear. And yeah, Nick, you're right, maybe we should also upgrade to the version 6. But so yeah, that's it. And wondering also if some people have an opinion on it, and maybe it will probably takes more space in the vertically, but I don't know if this is really an issue because we have like setting are already very long. So So if some people have an opinion on it,
I would like to see how this looks like with like nested settings for the notebook. I do not have
oh,
a
sorry.
so the screenshot that you show is for the terminal settings, and these are pretty flat. I think the configuration that the customization that we do has more bearing on settings for, say, notebook, because in notebook we repeat the same section of the settings 3 times for different for markdown cells, row cells, and code cells. So kind of like I do not know whether one will look much better than the other without looking at more examples. That's my point. Maybe it
Okay.
will still look good there, or maybe we'll have more feedback once there is a PR and we can click through and see that.
Okay, cool. But I can probably open a draft PR on that quickly and I'll say that, yeah. Cool, thank you.
Cool. You're up again, Mike.
Oh, again, okay, I already talked about JupyterLab favorites and conflict with Mist. Jupyter YDoc. So I advertised that reloading in YDoc is much nicer now because it handles reloading without scrolling you to the top of the page. That was the case for notebooks now and for files, but it turned out that Rust encodes multi-byte Unicode very differently to Python, which is a known issue in PyCRTT. So there is a pull request which tries really hard to be able to reconcile the Python and Rust encoding of Unicode, multi-byte Unicode characters, and tries to soft reload and falls back to the hard reload if the Unicode is just too hard to work with. So heads up if anyone reports that there is like a breakage in files when they get reloaded from disk in version 3.3.2, they need to upgrade to 3.3.3, which it's not a thing that most users in the Anglosphere would encounter, but it would be like a really bad bug for, say, Japanese users who would like add comments in the native language with a native script. And another PSA is that Jupyter Collaboration 4.2 now will stop the file watcher, so kind of fixes a resource leak after 24 hours of errors. So like a very permissive, but I think reasonable default. And that Windows new line returns are now fixed, are back, which caused files to be corrupted because of them. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. We do not have a meeting next week nor the week after. Happy holidays, everyone. I think we decided that last week, right? I'm seeing a verifying nod from Darian. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Okay. We'll see everyone online in the new year. I'll stop the recording now.
So just have maybe a question.